one of the things that's always fascinated about this piece with me is just exactly how scary this show actually is. And the reason it fascinates me is because this is extremely difficult to do in music. When you think about it, there's no other horror thriller, musical, or opera that's out there that functions even close to the level of Sweeney Todd. There's things like Carrie and Jekyll and Hyde and Phantom, but none of those are really like thriller horror shows. And I think one reason is that musical comedy, as it's called, in its own, tends to be very sunny and bright and joyful. And so traditionally it doesn't lean itself to darker sort of horror, thriller, thrills and chills kind of music. But I've always been fascinated by how he actually composed this music and how he managed to make the show scary, especially on a musical level.
And
And
let me
that's,
just interrupt for a second.
sure,
Do you think Rodgers and Hammerstein could have written a horror musical?
I don't think they could have, no.
Okay.
I'm not sure. You do have to have sort of a sensibility about it. You have to have a keen interest in it. And in
Uh-huh.
Steve's case, it was largely because I think he had studied and loved so many thriller horror shows, and he
Uh-huh.
loved a good slasher film.
Uh-huh.
And so he sort of like knew how these things were put together, and it was always, I think something his creativity was just waiting to pounce on.
Okay.
And he was not afraid to explore darker elements,
Right.
really darker elements, not just Rodgers and Hammerstein kind of dark, but really darker elements, and go into it. But
Right.
how you hold an audience's attention through all this is just extremely difficult on a stage,
Yeah.
because what could happen is you write something and people take it as hokey or funny, and it makes them laugh, or all the wrong sort of things. And when I saw Sweeney Todd, there were audible gasps in the audience. And at one point, I remember people screaming, not like really horror show screaming, but like it was coming out. They were like shocked things were happening. And it wasn't just because of the visuals. It was from a very calculated way that he wrote it, scored it, and the music that sort of drove this tension. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is how he did that musically, because it's very key to understanding what the piece is. So I have some slides and things I want to show you. Because it's a horror show, it's easier to watch some of these things and see how they're scored versus just me talking it through. So let me get this open. And when this opens up, you're going to see a picture of a guy named Bernard Herrmann. Bernard Herrmann is one of the greatest film composers that ever existed. He is very famous for writing many, many films during the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and into the early 80s. And he wrote not all, but many of the most famous Alfred Hitchcock films, especially in the 1950s and early 1960s. He was an extremely innovative guy. He would always come to films with a very, very different kind of approach to what the music is and what it could do. So for instance, in The Day the Earth Stood Still, he scored it for 7 harps, an electric violin, and an electric cello. Very unusual scoring. In Journey to the Center of the Earth, he scored it with 5 pipe organs and 6 tubas to get the sound he wanted. And when he did Hitchcock's The Birds, he left orchestra out of it entirely, and the score is nothing but him manipulating bird cries. So everything he did in that, he manipulated himself like an orchestral score, and it scares the bejesus out of you when you watch this film. He really knew how to do that. Stephen Sondheim came to this guy in 1945 when he went to watch a film called Hangover Square. This film features a mad, murdering composer. And the end of the film, the composer unveils his piano concerto called Concerto Macabre. And Bernard Herrmann had written all this music. And Steve was just very enamored by what he heard, and he wrote Bernard Herrmann a fan letter, which apparently he got some sort of reply back. I think Herrmann was very impressed that a 15-year-old kid had even paid any attention to the music in the piece, let alone would take the time to write a fan letter. So I want to look at just a little of this so you can hear what it sounded like and what kind of impression this music made on Stephen Sondheim. We're going to watch just a little bit of the opening credits, and you can hear a bit of this piano concerto into it. And particularly listen to like the sounds you're hearing when this music goes by. Take a listen. Bernard Herrmann used one particular chord that was his favorite to kind of invoke tension and fear, and it's this chord right here. This chord is he used it so much that it became known as the Herrmann chord. And it's made up of something very, very interesting. Even if you don't know music, you can see this. If you look at the bottom of that chord, the first note is a G, and the next one is 3 notes up, a B flat. That's called a minor third in intervals. Then the next one is a D, and the distance between the B flat and the D is called a major third, so it's a little bit bigger than the minor third. And then from the D to the F sharp, the high note, is another major third. So 2 major thirds and 1 minor third. And one thing that's really great about this chord, especially in terms of the way Herrmann uses it, is it's ambiguous and unstable. And otherwise, it doesn't tell you it's going into any direction. It doesn't necessarily need to be resolved. It just sort of exists in a kind of tense moment that doesn't really move it. You have to move it yourself, but it's very unstable and gives you that kind of a feeling. And it doesn't matter how you play it and in what inversion. You can do it wherever you play it. It's exactly the same sort of feeling that you get out of it. It doesn't matter. And you don't always have to play it as a chord. You can play any kind of individual notes with it and you'll get the same effect. Look at what he does for the credits of this movie with individual notes. So all that is his chord played backwards and forward, individually in notes, and he makes an entire theme out of that. But really he hits it at his best when he uses a mixture of both struck chords and individual notes, and this can create all kind of feelings of violence or panic or any kind of instability. So you have things like those kind of chords, and that's just the chord written out with notes. So look at what he does at this for these opening credits using this kind of idea. So what he does is use this particular chord, the Herrmann chord, as the driver of tension and fear in all accompanying these horror movies, setting them up. And this is what Sondheim became a huge admirer of. He loved Herrmann's techniques, particular in scoring these thriller movies. And he was quite a connoisseur of this and knew all the scores extremely well. When it came time to write Sweeney Todd, he said, I wanted Sweeney Todd to be an homage to him, an homage to Bernard Herrmann. And this is key to understanding the music of the piece. Sondheim says, I based a lot of the Sweeney Todd score on a specific chord that Herrmann used in almost all of his film work and spun it out from that. So it's this chord that he used to create the music for Sweeney Todd. He went on to say, in order to scare people, the only way you can do it is to keep music going all the time. That's the principle of suspense sequences in movies, and Bernard Herrmann was a master in that field. So Sweeney Todd is infused with music to keep the audience in a state of tension, to make them forget they're in a theater, and to prevent them from separating themselves from the action. What I'd like to do is look at the way he does that, and it starts with the idea of opening credits, because what Herrmann would do was this tension would start the minute those opening credits started, like we just saw in Hangover Square, Vertigo, and Psycho. So Sondheim does the exact same thing with Sweeney Todd. They don't have opening credits because it's a movie, but they have something like opening credits in that when you walk into the show, you hear this organ music playing, this kind of creepy gothic organ music playing. In some productions, you actually see the organist, and he uses this as the opening credits sort of sequence for it. He said, in his stage directions on the score, it says, as the audience enters, two grave diggers stand before a front drop, digging a grave downstage center. As they dig, they disappear gradually into the hole. Now, we're not going to see that happen because we're going to watch it in the video that was produced for the first national tour in 1982. But what they did is, because they knew this music was opening credits type music, they actually use it for the opening credits of the video. Take a listen to what Steve writes here. So that's the opening credit sequence, which Sondheim calls a prelude. And here's a picture of it from the score, and it's written for an organ. So what I want you to see is that this is based on a tune, which I call the Lucy and Ashes tune. It is a leitmotif used throughout the score. And I'm not going to talk about leitmotifs today, but just know that this theme is... See my girl again. And this theme actually plays 4 times during this very first page. So you hear this 4 times, but the theme, that leitmotif in itself, is not scary. What makes it scary is that every time you hear it, it's done to the Bernard Herrmann chord. So it starts out here. That's the Bernard Herrmann's chord that he harmonizes with. And then just a little bit further in, you hear it again. Another Bernard Herrmann chord, and then down here, another Bernard Herrmann chord, and then the 4th one is... Those are all that exact same Bernard Herrmann chord. And he does this chord even when he's not doing the Lucy theme. So this entire page of music is the Bernard Herrmann chord over and over and over again. In fact,
Edward,
yeah,
this is awesome because everybody says, "Oh, Sweeney Todd is built out of the Dies Irae," right? And you're saying, "Okay, and," right? Which is just interesting to me that there are
yeah,
these
I'll
two.
get to that, but it's not built on the Dies Irae. That is a theme in it, but none of
That's
even
great.
I'll
Thank you.
show you, because even the Dies Irae is harmonized with this chord.
Terrific. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so it's all throughout. It's in all the numbers. The occasional numbers that it's not in are numbers like the love scene with Joanna. That sort of thing is not shown. But in general, it's in almost every single song in Sweeney Todd. I'll show you a couple examples. This is at the beginning. This is in the tale of Sweeney Todd. And then he writes these chords. Then this is the Bernard Herrmann chord. So that underlying regurgitating sound is all because of the Bernard Herrmann chord that is scored in that. When you get to swing your razor high, swing your razor high, the word Sweeney is the Bernard Herrmann chord. Sweeney. Both of those are Bernard Herrmann chords. So he fleshes them out there on the word Sweeney. In the part where they come into London, no place like London, Anthony sings, there's no place like London. But when Sweeney sings it, he harmonizes it differently. But there's no place like London. And now you have the Bernard Herrmann chord come in again on London. And of course, when the beggar woman shows up, he has to do the Bernard Herrmann chord. Alms, alms for a miserable woman. And then the thank you is the Bernard Herrmann chord. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's all Bernard Herrmann's chord, all throughout. He also said that Sweeney Todd is infused with music to keep the audience in a state of tension. So what I want to look at now is how does he do that throughout scenes, and how does he employ this chord in doing that? What is its function in the tension? So we're going to look at 2 scenes, the scene called Pretty Woman and the scene called Epiphany, to see how he works this chord and the tension. These 2 scenes occur in Act 1 about 3/4 of the way through. What has happened is the judge, on whom Sweeney is seeking revenge, shows up at Sweeney's shop for a shave. So the guy he wants has finally shown up. And what we know is that Sweeney wants to kill this guy. He wants to kill the judge. It's just a matter of when and how he's going to do it. So what I want to look at is how does he build tension into this act of murder? Musical tension. I'm not going to talk about the words, just the musical tension. There are 4 musical sections of this, and they all align with an action. 3 of these sections reprise music we've already heard before, and 1 section uses some new music. The first section is what I call preparing the throat for cutting. The judge is seated in the chair, and Sweeney is going to clean him up before he slices his throat. This section is built on a lilting tune to a very unstable meter that fluctuates between 5 and 4. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, back and forth and back and forth. And it means that nothing in here is going to feel like it's locked, like it's relaxed. It urges us to go on. But it's sweet, and it does not use the Herrmann chord at all. And here's a case where it doesn't. And the reason is Sweeney is trying to get the judge to relax, to calm down before he actually murders him. So he doesn't give in to any of the tension just yet. There's at the end of it a little whistle wind down, and Sondheim removes all the accompaniment from this, so it just goes into kind of a silence thing with just Sweeney whistling this tune. Then the next section, he grabs the murder weapon, which is his shaving razor. And when he takes this, the music changes into a very slow 3 meter. And we've heard this before. It's very hypnotic and trance-like, and he gets interrupted a couple times by the judge, but there's this constant building of anticipation. And now, because he wants to raise the tension level, Sondheim brings in the Herrmann chord. So right at the end of it, he builds this up, and then here's the chord. Tension of the Herrmann chord goes all through that. So you're hearing a reprise of the tune My Friends with the Razor, and then when the razor is lifted up to the judge's neck, this tension comes in, and that is Bernard Herrmann's chord again. The third section is Pretty Women. And in Pretty Women is the only new part of this new music. And so it's in the same meters we just heard, in the same tempo. There's a constant pulse that builds up in volume, and he just repeats this sound. Pretty women, yeah, na, 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 yeah, na, 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 na. And then we get this. All of a sudden, that little bit of oddity, and that is called a tritone. Pretty Women, called Diabolus in Musica, and that is also an unstable interval. So here he's taking another unstable musical element and throwing it into the mix on Pretty Women, repeated back and forth. What he does then is to build up tension through this. When he starts to raise his arm up and is about to slice the judge's throat, these tritones are just pounded out over and over and over again, like slicing, to jack up the tension of that scene. But of course, unfortunately, Anthony interrupts the whole murder and bursts in to tell Sweeney of his plan with Joanna. Even here, what you get is the Herrmann chord setting in, because now we've into a fast, sort of frenzied 4, and the accompaniment does back and forth between 2 chords. And then this, that is the Herrmann chord. Right there, back and forth between sort of normal writing Herrmann, normal Herrmann. So tension, release, back and forth through this whole section. So the musical section, the musical tension of this looks something like this if you would graph it. It opens with relaxing the judge in the chair, then there's a slow build, then some tension, and then the tension really goes crazy, and then Anthony bursts in. And if you look at the placement of the Herrmann chord and the tritones, they line up exactly where the musical tension is, and he's doing this exactly on purpose. Let's have a look at this scene. I've labeled everything so you can see what it is. Take a look.
And what may I do for you, sir?
Oh, yes.
A stylish trimming of the hair, a soothing skin massage.
You see, sir, a man infatuate with love, her ardent and eager slave. So fetch the pomade and pumice stone, and lend me a more seductive tone, a sprinkling perhaps of French cologne. But first, sir, I think a shave.
The closest I ever gave.
way, Mr. Todd.
'Tis your delight, sir, catching fire from one man to the next.
'Tis true, sir, love can still inspire the blood to pound the heartly pyre. What more can man require than love, sir?
More than love, sir.
What, sir?
Women.
Ah, yes, women.
Pretty women.
Hmm? Oh, yeah.
Now then, my friend, now to your purpose. Patience, enjoy it. Revenge can't be taken in haste.
Haste, and if we wed, you'll be commended, sir.
My lord! And who, may it be said, is your intended, sir? My ward.
Pretty as a rosebud.
Pretty as her mother.
What? What was that?
Nothing, sir, nothing. May we proceed, sir? Pretty women. Fascinating. Sipping coffee. Dancing. Pretty women are a wonder. Pretty women sitting in the window, standing on the stair. Something in them cheers the air. Pretty women
Silhouetted,
stay within you.
glancing,
Stay forever.
breathing lightly.
Pretty women. Pretty women. Blowing out their candles or combing out their hair. Even when they leave you and vanish, they still are there with you. Are pretty women at their mirrors, in their gardens, letter writing, flower picking, weather watching. Oh, they make a man sing. Roof of heaven, as you're living. Pretty women, sir, pretty women. Here's to pretty women, all the pretty women.
Joanna marries me Sunday. Everything's set. You!
There is indeed a higher power to warn me thus in time. Joanna elope with you, deceiving slut.
Okay, so that's the pretty woman scene. You can see how these tensions totally align with this Herrmann chord and the tritone, the devil's music, the tritone. Now let's look how it bursts out into the Epiphany, which is, of course, the mad scene. And this is where the Herrmann chord gets completely unleashed, totally unleashed. There are 4 musical themes, I'm going to call it, in this, and every single one of them is either some form of Bernard Herrmann's chord, or Bernard Herrmann's chord is laid on top of it somehow, but they're all connected that way through the Herrmann chord. The first one is what I call the psycho frenzy. So you hear these, And all that is starting in the middle of the Herrmann chord and growing out like this. So you end up with the Herrmann chord at the end of it. That's what that is. And the way he's going to use it is the same way it's used in the movie Psycho. So in Psycho, Bernard Herrmann uses this to mean frenzy, murder, stuff is going to happen. And Sondheim is using this. So it's a very similar use of it in terms of the thriller technique. There are two variants of this. All they do is break this psycho frenzy down. So one of them is, that's one, and another one is, So basically all it's doing is playing them much slower and broken apart, but they are the exact same thing. The second theme is what I call psycho slashes. These he uses hard blocked chords, Bernard Herrmann's chords, way up here. And he does it on top of a theme we've already heard from a tune called Wait, where Mrs. Lovett sings, "Wait, love, now, hush, love, hush." Those are Bernard Herrmann's stabbing chords from Psycho, right on top of it. Then comes the dies irae. Here's what David was talking about. The dies irae is used throughout Sweeney Todd. It is a Latin chant, and it's aligned with death. Day of wrath is what they're saying. And he uses it, but thematically. It is not an element of fear, because if you play it on its own, that alone does not make you afraid, but Stephen Sondheim knows how to make it afraid. First, he weaves it into the accompaniment, so the way you hear it is like this. But look at the way this is harmonized. He's got Bernard Herrmann's chords on top of it, and when he plays, right there's another one, it's all in it. So top and bottom, he's got Bernard Herrmann's chord. So he makes the dies irae sound frightening by adding this harmonic element to it. The next one is what I call the Lucy and Ashes theme. This is in the leitmotif, and it was in the organ prelude at the beginning. But he uses this, sorry, my piano pedal flipped. He uses this multiple times in the Epiphany, and it's always harmonized with the Bernard Herrmann chord. So it's Lucy lies in ashes, but the way it's harmonized is Lucy lies in ashes, and this is Bernard Herrmann's chord right there, harmonizing the whole thing. And this is heard 4 times, and every time you hear it, it goes up in pitch. So the first time it's reasonably low in his voice, then a little higher, then a little higher, then a higher. Again, another technique to up the tension level. When he finally gets to the end of the Epiphany and sings Full of Joy, Steve puts on 3 different Bernard Herrmann chords on top of each other. So the first one is he sings Full of Joy, and that's set to Full of Joy, and then he has another one, and then these slasher chords resolving to here, the third Bernard Herrmann chord. So it is the compounded version of Bernard Herrmann's chord at the end of this. So the greatest tension, which comes at the end, is because of the Herrmann chords. Before we look at it, one last technique he uses, which are what's called fast cuts in movies, where you literally cut the film very quickly between, and it helps to drive the frenzy forward, drive the motion forward, and it elevates that sense of madness that you have because you keep flipping between frames. Steve does the exact same thing with the music and flips it back and forth very quickly. So you have in here tension that is always just sort of running, and at the end, the Bernard Herrmann chords just make it go a freak out, and he ends on a very high note, harmonized to this Bernard Herrmann chord. So have a look at this, and again, I've labeled it. You can see what I'm talking about.
Pretty women, here's to pretty women, all the pretty women.
Joanna marries me Sunday. Everything's set.
You!
Just stop it.
There is indeed a higher power to warn me thus in time. Joanna, elope with you to deceiving slut. I'll lock her up in some obscure retreat where neither you nor any other vile, corrupting youth shall ever lay eyes on her again.
But, sir, beg of you,
As for you, barber, it is all too clear what company you keep.
sir, this is...
Service them well and hold their custom, or you'll have none of mine. Out of my way, you marry a Sunday, will she? Yes, we'll see about that when I get home. Lying baggage. Rubbish.
All this running and shouting. What is it now, dear?
I had him, and then...
Oh, I know the side you busted it. I saw them running down the street. Now for all the fat and the fire.
No, I had him! His throat was bare beneath my hand.
Now, dear, don't fret.
No, I had him! His throat was there, and he'll never come again.
No, hush, love, hush. I keep telling you.
When?
What's your
Why do I wait? You told me to wait. Now he'll never come again. There's a hole in the world like a great black pit, and it's filled with people who are filled with shit, and the vermin of the world inhabit it. But not for long. They all deserve to die. Tell you why, Mrs. Lovett, tell you why. Because in all of the whole human race, Mrs. Lovett, there are two kinds of men and only two. There's the one staying put in his proper place and the one with his foot in the other one's face. Look at me, Mrs. Lovett, look at you. No, we all deserve to die. Tell you why, Mrs. Lovett, tell you why. Because the lives of the wicked should be made brief. For the rest of us, death will be a relief. We all deserve to die. And I'll never see Joanna. No, I'll never hug my girl to me. Finished! All right, you, sir, how about a shave? Come and visit your good friend Sweeney. You, sir, welcome to the grave. I will have vengeance. I will have salvation. Who, sir? You, sir? No one in the chair. Come on. Sweeney's waiting. I want you bleeders. You, sir. Anybody, gentlemen. Now, don't be shy. Not one man. No, nor 10 men. No, 100. Can assuage me. I will have you. And I will get him back even as he gloats. In the meantime, I'll practice on less honorable throats. And my Lucy lies in ashes. And I'll never see my girl again. But the work waits. I'm alive at last. And I'm full of joy.
Just as he said, the entire show is an homage to Bernard Herrmann, and what he means is he's going to use that chord to create the tension that drives the horror thrills and chills underneath and keeps you on the edge of the seat. Like every single thing Stephen Sondheim ever did, is he bases it on something before he takes it to an entirely new level, and that's what he does in this show. He takes that chord, which Bernard Herrmann didn't invent either, and he takes that chord, and in paying tribute to Herrmann, he uses it in a way that is absolutely extraordinary. Herrmann didn't write people singing that chord. He had to use it to color film. But Stephen Sondheim wrote this music to sing. So it's an extraordinary use of it, and it really, really works. And it's what I believe makes the thing tense from the very, very top of the show right to the end, is that influence that pays off all the way through. And again, there are a bunch of elements he uses, like the tritone, anything that's unstable that creates tension. He uses various leitmotifs. He uses the dies irae as one of them throughout. But those are not tension builders on themselves. The tension builder is this chord from Bernard Herrmann.